Amen.
So thank you all for being here. We are recording this so that everyone is able to tell friends, tell your fellow people on the board of trustees, administrative councils that this is available. And also we want to share these words with other folks around the conference. This is actually our third gathering of where we have presented an outline of our work and what we do. And each time we found this very, very helpful. The advantage of being here tonight is that you also will hear some of the lessons that we have learned in working with almost 50 churches through over the past couple of years. So, Christy, are you sharing? Would you share?
Mhm.
Our plan this evening is to run through a presentation with you, and then at the end have time for questions. And I want to make sure I'm here. We go. We're just going to get the presentation up. All right. We did this round for the first time yesterday at noon, and had a pretty good attendance, and wanted to also offer it in the evenings. We do this at the foundation from time to time with subjects that can be helpful to churches that also reflect the work that we do at the foundation. First of all, I want to just say a word about the foundation. We are what we call an edge organization. So we're an independent 501c3 organization. Our sole purpose is really to support the mission and ministry of New England Church and the New England Conference. We are kind of joined at the hip with churches in our mission, but we don't receive mission shares, and we have our own board of directors and so forth. But we enjoy a very close working relationship with New England churches. Now, our the group within the foundation that is involved in property work, the Wesley Development work, Christy, you can, there we go, is really 7 people. And these people are both experienced in the church itself. Some of us are pastors. So first on the list, Herb Taylor went to business school, had a distinguished career in management consulting, then went to seminary and became a pastor, served churches for 15 years, and then also ran an assisted living facility, retirement community, and developed more sites within that community, and then came back and pastored churches again. David Maynard brings about 40 years of experience in property management and commercial development. Christy Basada, who you'll hear from tonight, is an engineer by training, did large company engineering before also going to seminary. And she is a deacon in the United Methodist Church. She also has a lot of experience in affordable housing work, community organizing, and working with community structures, governance structures for strategies of nonprofits. And John Steele is a retired military lieutenant colonel who works with us in the property management area. Again, highly skilled. As I mentioned, I've been with the foundation for 6 years. I'm a mid-career pastor. Also had time in the policy and commercial worlds before going to seminary, and then served churches for about 10 years before taking this role at the foundation. Pam DiMartino is a CPA, serves as the CFO of the foundation. And Michelle Fosnacht runs our office in Derry, New Hampshire. So all of us in some way, along with a couple other consultants, are involved in this work. I'm going to highlight just a couple of other names that are part of our advisory board, just so that, you can see the experience that is involved in our work. Architects, structural engineers, affiliations with Massachusetts Housing, New Hampshire Housing, um, real estate, and tax systems. We also have some retired clergy, some representation of the conference trustees who are in the advisory board area, and so forth. We have a larger working group that includes the trustees and cabinet, and this is primarily to make sure that word about our work, generally, like we're doing tonight, is distributed throughout the conference so that people are aware of this resource. All right. I'm going to just say a couple words about our history as United Methodists, and we all love our buildings, and also change in building is really in our DNA. And if we go back to the earliest days of the church in the 1730s, there were a couple of brothers named John Charles Wesley that repurposed an old abandoned munitions factory and made it a ministry space. The foundry had worship, preaching space, surgeon, clinic, also had what we know of as a pharmacy, some low-income housing, apartments, stables for the horses and everything. But a couple of decades later, this foundry no longer met the needs. So what did they do? They closed it up, moved out, and moved into another place that we know of as Wesley's Chapel in London. And there the Methodist Society began its different mission, including this continued outreach. The point I want to make is that our building, as our buildings needs change, as our congregations needs change with regard to our buildings, this is what we Methodists do. The church is about people. We are the church, and buildings are a wonderful tool for us. And we want to use them until something more appropriate is there. Our trends really require us to rethink our buildings and property now. And so all of us virtually throughout the conference are experiencing some kind of decline in membership attendance, giving, endowments. We have aging membership. And what this means is that many of our wonderful older buildings, we're some of the oldest in the denomination in the US, of course, have smaller and smaller congregations and more aging congregations. It's becoming more and more difficult to maintain churches the way that we always have in the past. And so we really need new approaches to bring possibility and realize the opportunities that we have for ministry. I'm going to just highlight one testimonial. This is from a pastor in Massachusetts, and we'll be introducing testimonials throughout. These are churches that we've worked with, and the way in which our work is with them has had some impact. But again, we all know that the status quo is not working, and the programs that we've designed help churches move from feeling lost or confused or helpless to feeling more hopeful and motivated. And that's why we started this work. The church itself, in this slide, just indicates the problem graphically. Our programs help congregations who are feeling the weight, again, due to aging and also the buildings that need more and more maintenance, to move from a position where it's very heavy to a position where the building itself is easier to maintain, and we're doing mission at the same time, sort of from the way we've always done it to bringing the best of the past and present into the future, from anxiety to assuredness about our mission and legacy. Wesley Development is set up with 4 distinct areas. 3 of them are particularly active. One is property management. We do this primarily for the conference and managing their properties for residences, for district superintendents, bishops, so forth, and also for churches when they close church properties, helping them find the best use for those. We have another program, it's a group program to help churches be able to talk about this, talk about their problems with their buildings. That we have not been able to focus on as much. We have piloted that and are ready to go, but the demand from our church consulting has been so heavy, and so that is where we've been focusing our work. We'll be talking about the process that we go through later in our consulting projects with churches, which now number almost 50 different churches so far. We have another area that we work in when churches decide that they would like to do a project, and we'll talk about the different kinds of things that we're discovering. We are here. Sometimes congregations are very small and don't have the resource to be able to carry out a project, and so we're able to do that. I'm going to turn it over to Herb, who will dive into our church consulting and how that works.
Thanks, Ted. Yes, as has been mentioned, we who find ourselves in churches are faced with a new reality where folks just aren't going to church as much as they used to. That's what we face as a society, as a culture. Some of this is out of our control. And so there are churches we have found, and we all know, who are challenged by their buildings. Some people even say they're burdened by their buildings. So our focus in the consulting engagement is to help churches think about their physical assets and how they might use them to bring about both financial and missional sustainability. And what we do is facilitate a process. The process that we facilitate is one that involves 3 meetings. The first meeting is one when we really come to listen and learn about the church, about the property itself, about the ministry of the church, the congregation, understand the foundation upon which decisions will be made. We also have some time talking about the community, getting a sense from those within the group about the community that the church serves, the context in which it exists. And this process then leads to us between the first and second meeting doing an analysis of both the church and the community, looking at trends, understanding where the church is today and also where the community is today. A part of what happens between the first and second meeting is actually interviewing community stakeholders, community leaders. And we encourage, some people say voluntel, folks within the church to be involved in those discussions, because it's really important for church members to really listen and hear from community leaders about what they feel is happening in the community. So kind of getting outside the circle of just the church folks. And they will have input and insight on how the church buildings might be used for not only benefiting the community, but benefiting the church as well. So we provide a very simple sort of methodology and a form that church members use as they make these brief calls to gain this insight, which is vital, because when we get to the second meeting, we come with this analysis we've done of the church, the quantitative analysis, as well as the quantitative analysis of the community. Added to that is this insight, this qualitative insight from community leaders combined with what we've heard from church leaders. And we come and really sort of understand again where the church exists, as a ministry and where the church exists within the context of the community. We also begin to talk about potential strategic paths, options, alternatives that the church could take relative to its property, how it might be used in maybe new and different ways, just to get a feeling from the church leaders about what would be the risks and rewards of one path, what would be the strengths and weaknesses of an alternative path, getting a sense from the church sort of where it might stand. Between the second and third meeting, we go back with all of this information, and then in the third meeting, we present a draft report, still open to insight and feedback from the congregation, where we outline recommended steps that we think the church should take in order to have the information that it needs to make real data-driven decisions as it thinks about its future. And again, this we're not presenting in this instance a answer book. It is a guidebook, really. We're not here to tell the church this is what you should do. I sort of kid churches by saying, as Ted mentioned, we're not from the conference. We are, a separate entity as the Wesley Development Group within the foundation. So we have no power. What we are trying to do is provide churches with opportunities to control its own destiny. And again, it's through a facilitated process where we provide some concrete information that hopefully allows churches to move from discussion, which, if you've been in churches for a while, know where churches are very good at discussion, and moving churches from discussion to decision to action. So that's our focus. Some of those paths that churches have taken or might take include things like, how do we find building partners that might use space within a church building in a way that would really provide, again, both financial resources for the church, or sharing in the expenses of the church building, as well as potentially meeting a community need. We also uh, think about if there's other church property that might be either developed um, in a way that, again, might be helpful for the church financially, uh, support a mission in some way, as well as supporting a community need. We do get to the point sometimes with some churches with opening that door that's hard to think about, but important to have as an honest alternative in all instances. Is it time to think about your church? Is the church that you have today really the church building you need tomorrow and into the future? Is it helpful to be the legacy of a next generation to have a building that might not be the right building for the future? Uh, so we talk about a number of different alternatives, and obviously, again, because we aren't coming with any control. It's always in the church's hands to make a decision to do what they will. So we're not forcing the issue. We just simply, again, try to provide concrete information, data that allows a church to move forward in a way that it feels comfortable doing, maybe even challenged doing, within the unique context that it exists in. And as Ted mentions, we've done this with churches across New England, every state and every district we've worked with already. We've worked with churches in urban areas and suburban areas and rural areas, on the coast, even on islands. We've worked with churches that are, you could consider, very healthy, and churches that are really on the edge. Churches that have relatively good sized worship attendance, and churches that are very small. So we've really had experience now in every type of church, in every type of setting, understanding that every congregation is unique. And that's why that first meeting is so important, because we really want to understand the church and understand the context. But in doing this, we've heard from people who have talked about this process providing real clarity, giving hope, helping them take steps of renewal, and even when there's been some conflict in the church, help in deciding what to do through this process, enabling people to come together and feeling that they have a common focus for the future. So it has been rewarding, I know, for us, and I think a valuable engagement for each of the churches we've worked with so far, and I know into the future.
So after working with nearly 50 churches in 6 states, we've learned a few things, which is important. And there have been some themes that consistently come up for us as we do this work. The first one that we've learned is that churches are missing essential community connections. Another is that reaching out into the community is indeed fruitful. Also, churches are stuck in decision making, and perhaps most importantly, every church has options to move boldly into the future. So let's talk about what these mean for just a minute. Missing the community connection, there's this essential truth that people don't know what they don't know. And because church members often don't live in the neighborhoods where they worship, they end up lacking deep connections to local leaders who do live there. And they lean more toward a transactional, shorter term interaction. What this means is often that community leaders know very little about the working leaders or the workings of local congregations. People outside the church don't know what's happening inside the church. In addition, congregations know less than they think about the workings of the neighborhood. People inside the church don't know what's going outside the church. And this means that churches really benefit from building stronger connections and that those connections birth possibilities for the future. When congregations and communities have shared stakes, communities are transformed. And even when an obvious opportunity doesn't exist right away for a church, those community connections make it possible for people to reach out to each other when an opportunity does arise. And this yields good fruit. Let's talk about some of the things that we've seen in our work. Reaching out yields new investment. We have worked with a church in Vermont whose food ministry partnered with government and private grantors to fund significant building improvements and also to fund some ongoing ministry expenses. Similarly, Massachusetts churches have benefited from grant funding that they found was available to their community ministries, not necessarily church grants, but grants relating to education and other things. New knowledge. Congregations in Massachusetts and New Hampshire learned that municipal leaders had already identified their neighborhoods for positive redevelopment. This included things like new housing and also critical social services. And this allowed the churches to take a strong role in the transformation of their neighborhoods. New partnerships. We have seen this in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Connecticut, where church leaders met potential building partners and tenants with whom they could not only share space, but also share expenses. And this was beneficial to the church's bottom line. New understandings. Congregations in Massachusetts, Maine, and Rhode Island have learned to see their buildings and properties as resources for desperately needed housing or community spaces that were transformative for the community, but also help the churches or have potential to help the churches financially. Those processes are in progress right now. New beginnings. Congregations in Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts have explored the benefits and the attraction of being in ministry together with other churches through mergers and cooperative ministries. And of course, new confidence. Churches everywhere are emerging from the process with specific steps to take action so they know what to do next. And it looks like this. New beginnings, good fruit, good ministry. Here's another testimonial from a Massachusetts church leader emphasizing that the process of going to the community and listening was very valuable, and that they were able to identify need areas that they had not considered before. As Herb and Ted have mentioned, sometimes reaching out into the community is scary, but we give a very short questionnaire that folks can walk through to do it. And frankly, my experience is that people are wowed by the people they meet and the things that they learn in these conversations, and they get really excited about being connected. We've also learned that churches are stuck. Change can be intimidating, especially when it concerns people and things that we care about so deeply. And yet change is integral to every kind of growth. So though they are seeking to be faithful, congregations can have a hard time having the hard conversation, or they get into analysis paralysis. And so Instead of believing that doing the same things with more intensity will make the challenges of our time go away, this process helps congregations enter a structured process with time to think clearly, to gather information, and to become bravely unstuck. And then they can move toward the future that God has already envisioned for them. Years of unfruitful conversations is a quote from this pastor in Rhode Island. Does that sound familiar? By giving concrete action steps, again, the consulting process can help a congregation move past stuck to moving a step forward at a time.
Thank you, Christy. The last part of what the Wesley Development Group does, or the fourth segment of our practice, is helping churches if they decide mostly after consulting engagement, but sometimes churches will come directly to us, that there's a project that they don't have the expertise to take forward or would need some support and help to take a project forward. And the Wesley Development Group is able and equipped to be able to work with churches in those areas. Like, for instance, if there was a housing development developer that was interested in affordable housing or something in that nature, or some mixed use development, the Wesley Development Group could be, in a sense, the church's owner's agent, negotiating with that developer, putting together requests for proposals to attract interest in the site. If there was a sale involved, we also have expertise and have already helped churches who've decided that it made sense to sell a piece of their property. And we've helped churches literally, really maximize that sale. In some instances, multiple times over what they were looking to get for it originally. So the Wesley Development Group does help in those instances when the church asks us to, continue with them on the journey. As we move forward, I will just again reiterate that we have been involved in many different churches over the last 2 years, almost 50 consulting engagements, many more in the midst of now, and others who are sort of in the pipeline. We've worked with property management, mostly with the conference, and we were already involved in a few projects with churches who would like to use our expertise to help them in the journey. As we look toward the future, we again are excited about what has already happened, working with churches, being blessed to be involved with churches and helping them just recognize the reality of their present situation with honesty and openness, and inviting them to think about a path forward, and specifically providing steps that will enable them, a timeline, prioritizing those steps in order for churches to know where to focus their efforts, because we know everyone is working hard in so many churches. And sometimes it feels at the end of the day we're, putting a lot on churches to think about, but there is excitement at the end of each of these engagements, as an invigorating, really a rising of the spirit as people again feel hope at times when perhaps they haven't, as they've been debating and deciding where the future might what the future might bring. So some of you might wonder, what does this mean for a congregation? From the consulting side, very specifically, the good news is there are grants. The conference recognizes the importance of the work that we're doing, and they provide a matching grant for each church, as does the foundation a matching grant. So the total cost for a church, including expenses, is just $750. And I know $750 is still $750, but we've heard from other churches who said they, looked into other possibilities before talking to us, and have told us numbers in the thousands, $10,000 for similar work. So we think we're being very good stewards of our efforts, and the being fiscally responsible in what we offer to churches. And I promise you, churches have felt a value in our through our efforts. Again, a clear process that helps a church think about and plan for a future where God would lead them. Ted, I'll turn it back to you to close us out.
Sure.
Oh, forgot about this last testimony, which again just shares, the fact that we provide this information, engaging conversation within the church leadership that helps to discern a path forward. And this is just an example of that's for big and in this example, small congregations.
Thanks, Herb. I just wanted to, again, remind everyone, so we are here to help. We are a nonprofit. We know and understand churches. Um, all of us who work on the consulting side have been pastors leading churches and also have commercial experience. And so it's kind of a special set of skills. All of the people on our advisory board are church people. And so we are here to help. I want to invite you just to reach out to us anytime if you're interested in consulting or if you just have questions about your property or need some kind of assistance. And if we can't help, we may know which direction to point you in. But we have these conversations all the time with folks and have helped on a myriad of projects. At this time, I think I'd just like to turn it over to time for questions and any kind of discussion. We've got a good group of folks here today, and if you